Central African Republic hands over a notorious war crime suspect to the International Criminal Court. Confusion continues over what the Trump administration conclusions are regarding the death of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And could Cameroon's first video game studios and digital startups grow into a major player in the industry? Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. The International Criminal Court says the Central African Republic has handed over a war crime suspect wanted for alleged murder, deportation and torture of Muslims in that country. CAR officials transferred Alfred Yekatom on Saturday to officials from the Global Court in The Hague, which is investigating 6 years of violence that has destabilized a region at the heart of the continent. The United Nations Commission of Inquiry found that Christian militias under Yekatom had carried out war crimes and crimes against humanity by targeting Muslims. The International Criminal Court, established to prosecute the worst crimes when member countries cannot or will not do so, issued a sealed arrest warrant for Yekatom on November the 11th. ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda says Yekatom is criminally responsible for the alleged crimes committed in the Central African Republic between 5th of December 2013 and August 2014. South Africa's highest court has relaxed the nation's laws on marijuana, and now local entrepreneurs are trying to cash in on the popular herb. Among the latest entries to the market, several highly popular cannabis-laced alcohol products which deliver the unique taste but without the signature high. Marijuana activists say this could just be the beginning, and that the famous plant could do much more for the national economy. Viewers Anita Powell reports from Johannesburg.
Marijuana is getting its time in the South African sun after being decriminalized in September. Not only here, where it's now legal to grow your own personal supply, but also on the open market, where entrepreneurs have introduced a range of pot-themed products to cash in on the buzz. This hemp-infused gin doesn't contain THC, the chemical in cannabis that causes dazed and confused effects. But even without the psychoactive component, it's selling like hotcakes, says the gin's creator, cannabis advocate Connor Davis.
There are over 100,000 products that can come from cannabis. You know, the industrial benefits of it. I mean, you can build an entire house from cannabis alone, from the insulation to the actual brickwork to your carpeting to your linen. Everything can be made from hemp. So that has incredible potential.
Even recreational products like this Cannabeer are making serious cash.
We sold out of our first batch of stock within 10 days of its release, and at the moment we brewed 100,000 liters for the next batch, which we've sold out already, so we're doubling that to 200,000 liters for the next batch.
South Africa's government is studying the economic potential of cannabis.
The statistics that we have been comparing from the United States to South Africa, potentially immediately from day one, we've got at least 200,000 jobs to be given in the cannabis industry.
Julian Stobbs and Myrtle Clark are marijuana advocates. The group led the push for South Africa's decriminalization of the weed. Clark says she sees the plant entering the lucrative beauty market.
We know that cannabis oil and hemp seed oil is very, very high in omega-3s and 6s, and it's very good for your skin. I use a 1% THC infused moisturizer, which is absolutely amazing. And everything from balms for your tattoos to hair products. I think that has got huge potential to try and get rid of as many of the chemicals that we put in our skin and our hair.
Her partner is less optimistic about commercialization, but sees marijuana entering the culture in a way it never has before.
I see quite a scary future. I see different cultures trying to get in on the deal now that it's hip to the groove and not a scaly thing to be doing, smoking skanky joints. And now it's really hip, and you've got beautiful vaporizers and stuff, and Epic Glass and vape pens and Beverly Hills chicks doing it on Chatsha.
But that, Stobbs admits, is the point of legalizing cannabis. Once it becomes acceptable, seed, well, spreads like a weed. Anita Powell, VOA News, Johannesburg.
Well, substandard or fake anti-malaria drugs caused the deaths of between 64 and 158,000 people per year from a perfectly curable disease. Now, according to a European Union-funded report, tens of thousands of people in Africa are dying needlessly each year because of fake and counterfeit medication. Almost half of the fake and low-quality medicines reported to the World Health Organization between 2013 and 2017 were found to be in sub-Saharan Africa. West Africa has become a hub for fake and counterfeit drugs, which originate from mainly China, but also some come from India, Paraguay, Pakistan, and the United Kingdom. More than 80 children were killed in Nigeria in 2009 by a teething syrup tainted with a poisonous chemical normally used in engine coolant and blamed for causing kidney failure. Well, Monday is World Toilet Day. Nearly 1 million people are killed by water, sanitation, and hygiene-related diseases each year. That's according to the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and the International Telecommunications Union. In South Asia, India is on the largest toilet building spree in the history of mankind. But despite the massive push, millions of poor people continue to struggle for clean and hygienic means to relieve themselves. Aid group Sulabh International, which says it has built 1.5 million toilets in households across the country, is working on bringing about behavioral change in the rural sector and helping people realize the importance of toilets. Around 76 million Indians need improved water sources and 770 million require proper toilets. As a result, 68,000 children under 5 die annually due to diarrheal diseases caused by unsafe water and poor sanitation. Now, a World Health Organization report says after several years of steady declines, annual cases of malaria, the mosquito-borne disease, are leveling off. In a report released Monday, the World Health body calls on global health authorities to counter a worrying lull in the fight against malaria by focusing their efforts on the near dozen mostly African countries where it claims most lives. In 2017, a report found nearly 70% of all cases and deaths were concentrated in 10 African countries, including Cameroon, Nigeria, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, plus India. Now, the WHO report revealed that some 50% of Africans are at risk of catching malaria and are still not sleeping under insecticide-treated nets in 2017. Well, more than 130,000 children join U.S. families every year through domestic and foreign adoptions. Because black youngsters are disproportionately represented in child welfare system and often are adopted into white families, VOA has taken a close look at their experiences. What challenges do white parents and black children encounter in forming a family? What do young adoptees think about immersion in homes and communities that may have little racial diversity? In the first report of our 5-part series, VOA's Claire Morin-Giberg visits families in the western state of New Mexico, where blacks make up just 3% of the population.
Megan Walsh directs La Familia Namaste, an adoption agency in Albuquerque, New Mexico. For 20 years, she has helped families welcome children into their homes, kids of all ages and races.
A lot of adoptive families struggle when they adopt transracially because they are maybe not so comfortable stepping outside their comfort zone. And I think it's really important for adoptive families to be able to realize that when they adopt transracially, they're asking their child to often be the minority even in their family.
Every year, La Familia finds families for roughly 80 children from birth to 17 years old. 1 in 3 of the agency's adoption placements are transracial, which means the kids do not share the same race as their adoptive family. For many parents, race is not an issue.
Starting out, I went through the foster care system to adopt, and they just say, we have a little boy, you know, this is his name, this is where he's at. And he was in the hospital, and so you go and you fall in love, and they're your child.
When they ask if the children are ours, and it's like, well, yeah, they are ours, because they were ours from day one, just about. Doesn't really matter where they came from, they're here now.
Transracial adoptions come with their own challenges.
Some children realize early on that they are different from the rest of their family and their communities.
At 10, he's just starting to notice that people might be looking at us, that we don't look like every other family in town, that there aren't as many black children in our neighborhood.
Adopted children can often feel lonely or like outsiders, especially if they live in what they see as an all-white world.
The first thing that families need to do when they're raising a black child or a child of an ethnicity different than theirs is that they need to find professionals in their community that share ethnicity with their child.
Skincare or hair care is another challenge for white families who adopt black kids, particularly girls.
With most families, what I've found is that they start by coming in and asking about, hair. That's the initial referral. But the truth of the matter is that it's so much deeper than that. Self-esteem, of course, how a child feels being in a place like New Mexico where we have such a small population of people of African descent.
Sometimes I'll walk into a class and the first thing that comes to my mind is there another black person in this room that I can relate to or that looks similar to me?
And it's interesting for moms, I think, and families to know that bit of hair culture, because
absolutely.
Hair is a socio-political issue in our culture. It'll help us as white parents who have not experienced this to understand, even going deeper.
Learning to value everyone of every ethnicity and not to be afraid of what we don't know. I think that's what's really important. People that get really stuck on being colorblind, I feel like they're doing their kids a disservice because they're not teaching them that how they are is wonderful and how they came into this world is important and vital for everybody.
I do. I kind of look like you.
You do kind of look like me.
Well, that report by Claire Morin-Giberg, narrated by Haiti Adams-Fitzpatrick there. Now, in Tuesday's part 2 of our adoption series, Chad Gawler Sojourner grew up uncomfortable in his own black skin. Despite the loving support of his adoptive white family and white parents, he felt isolated in largely white Tacoma, a port city in the northwestern state of Washington. But he used that sense of alienation as a tool to build a healthy racial identity, both in coaching other transracial adoptive families and in his performance art. You won't want to miss Tuesday's part 2, so join us. Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54, the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook. So check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Still ahead on Africa 54. Cameroon's first video game studios growing into a major player in the industry. But first, a look at Monday's headlines.
In Ethiopia, African Union leaders agreed Sunday on reforms to streamline the AU body and compel member states to pay their dues during a special summit convened to push through the long-discussed changes. Zimbabwe marks 1 year since longtime leader Robert Mugabe gave in to military-led pressure, street protests, and resigned. Guinean peacekeepers with the UN mission in Mali carry out routine demining operations in a restive northern region where explosive devices continue to pose a threat. The defense minister of Chad claims the army has removed and cleared the enemy in Miski and Tibesti, a violent region in the north of the country. Finally, people in Malawi are rushing to exploit the gold discovered last year on the outskirts of the capital, Lilongwe.
Could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African Beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
But our confusion continues in the U.S. Capitol over what the administration of President Donald Trump has concluded regarding the death of Saudi journalist and U.S. Resident Jamal Khashoggi and the implications for U.S.-Saudi relations. Viewers, Michael Bowman reports President Trump has repeatedly deflected questions about the kingdom's crown prince. Amid news reports the CIA believes Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered the killing.
Nearly 2 months after a grisly crime and after weeks of shifting stories and assertions from Riyadh, U.S. President Donald Trump is not tipping his hand about who ordered Jamal Khashoggi's execution.
We'll be having a very full report over the next 2 days, probably Monday or Tuesday.
Did the CIA assess that MBS was behind it?
They haven't assessed anything yet. It's too early. It was a very premature report, but that's possible. We're going to see.
In an interview on Fox News Sunday, Trump said the Crown Prince had told him maybe 5 times that he was not involved in the killing of Khashoggi. The president was asked if Mohammed bin Salman lied to him.
I don't know. You know, who can really know? But I can say this. He's got many people now that say he had no knowledge.
It's very difficult for me to conceive of a murder of a prominent journalist and critic being carried out without the Crown Prince's knowledge.
Congressional Democrats are urging Trump to accept the conclusions of the U.S. intelligence community.
It's vitally important that this administration not allow itself to become part of any Saudi cover-up, generally any cover-up of the Crown Prince's involvement. The Saudis have already undermined their position in the world, undermined their standing.
Whatever the CIA's assessments, the State Department insists no final conclusions have been reached on who ordered Khashoggi's killing. Some Republicans are urging patience.
Let's see what the president says on Tuesday. If we're going to deal with this relationship, which does really impact the balance of power in the Middle East, it does really impact how we, the balance to Iran, which is clearly a bad actor. We need to be absolutely sure we know exactly what we're talking about.
Beyond geostrategic concerns, Trump has said Saudi Arabia generates, quote, a lot of jobs, a lot of business, a lot of economic development for the United States. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
Well, one of Cameroon's first video game studios and most successful digital startups is growing into a major player in the industry. Despite obstacles, Kiros Games, as it's called, is committed to drawing inspiration from its local mythology and culture. Here's viewers Mariama Diallo.
Kiros Games draws on African culture rather than on Hollywood inspiration. Co-founder Dominique Yacon says the gaming industry in Africa isn't being tapped nearly enough.
It's the biggest industry today. It has, it's even bigger than cinema, actually. And we wanted to be part of it and to bring the African culture in this industry, in this world.
Avid gamer Ivan Gounou has fallen in love with the fantasy role-playing game Orion Legacy of the Corée-aux-Danes.
What I really like in the Orion game is that we can see ourselves as Africans, whether it's the fashion or the fabric that the characters are wearing. It's not too Western.
Neither is the storytelling.
They've also inserted local stories that only Africans would recognize.
Illustrator Amanda Atangana says she's lucky.
Kiro Games was already an inspiration for me, so joining them is a dream come true, especially from an artistic point of view.
For decades, Cameroon has battled with poor infrastructure, making it tougher to attract vibrant startup scenes like those found in countries like Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa.
The greatest challenge we had to face were the financing of the studio to begin with, And we also have technical challenges like, there are no specific studies for making video games here in Cameroon, so we had to learn everything from ourselves.
From YouTube videos to a Kickstarter campaign to tapping the Cameroonian diaspora, the group was able to raise $227,000 to launch the gaming and tech startups in their homeland. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
Well, humans have been genetically modifying foods for centuries. While tomatoes or carrots, for instance, don't look much like the mass-produced foods we eat today. But in the era of genetic modification, consumers have tended to keep so-called frankenfoods at arm's length. VOA's Kevin Enochs tells us about a new generation of precision editing techniques that may change that.
Holstein dairy cows are prime milk producers, but notorious for their horns.
And they're quite dangerous for human workers and also for their fellow cows, and so they're normally manually removed.
But thanks to some very specific genetic editing, these Holsteins don't grow horns.
It's kind of a pair of molecular scissors, if you will, that you can tell to go and cut the DNA at a very precise location in the genome. And what that enables you to do is go in and very precisely alter one particular gene of the thousands of genes that make up the genome, and you can introduce useful genetic variations.
In this case, geneticists replace the specific gene that makes Holsteins grow horns with the genetic information from hornless Angus cows. This kind of very specific genetic editing is the next wave of genetic engineering, and it's already having an impact on the food industry beyond hornless Holsteins. These soybeans have been edited to remove the trans fat in soybean oil, and these mushrooms have been edited to not turn brown. Scientists are hoping the new tools can solve some very serious problems in the farming world, like citrus greening disease, which is devastating U.S. citrus crops and is also present in India and China.
Florida, it has cut our production from about 240 million boxes, maybe 15 to 18 years ago, down to 45 million boxes in the last season.
These scientists are playing with the plant's own genetic code to create a disease-resistant citrus tree. They aren't introducing any foreign genetic material, but instead pushing the plant's own natural evolutionary processes.
What we're doing is changing the sequence of the DNA in the plant, the natural sequence itself.
It's important, experts say, to note the difference between genetic engineering and genetic editing.
Old GMOs, or first generation as I like to call it, you would put a gene in and it would land anywhere in the chromosome. Whereas gene editing is kind of like editing a sentence or a word, where you're very precisely going in there and making edits in specific locations.
Even with precision editing, Kuzma is concerned about the genetically modified foods because small changes can have unintended consequences. She would like to see every GMO go through a case-by-case rigorous approval process to look for potentially dangerous effects of changing the genes of any living thing. Kevin Enochs, VOA News.
Well, now, some of you may be familiar with mythical sea monsters such as Scotland's infamous Loch Ness Monster, Nessie, and giganto-fictional beasts of comic book fame. But millions of years ago, there were actually real-life sea monsters that lived and thrived in what we now call the South Atlantic Ocean. And our Smithsonian Museum in Washington is giving visitors a chance to learn about these ancient marine reptiles. VOA's Julie Tabo has more.
As the continents of South America and Africa separated millions of years ago, scientists say a fantastic array of ferocious predators and other life forms colonized the newly formed body of water off the coast of Angola. Today, paleontologists are studying ancient fossils they excavated from the coastal cliffs of Angola as part of a collaborative project between Angolan, American, Portuguese, and Dutch researchers.
We knew that there were fossils there, we just didn't know how good they would be. This was a vast, unknown terrain, and we wanted to get there.
Louis Jacobs is part of a team of scientists and students at Southern Methodist University that helped prepare the fossils for a special display at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History in Washington.
In this exhibit, any visitors, kids or anyone else, can look and see and compare how the ecosystem and its animals of the Cretaceous of 72 million years ago are similar to ecosystems today.
Michael Paulson, Senior Research Fellow at SMU, points out a few examples.
This guy here is a little optimized fish eater, and you see the long, narrow snout, the interlocking teeth. This would be similar to what you would see in the ocean today in a dolphin, for instance. Here's another great example of the differences that you see between the animals in this ecosystem. This particular form is optimized to eating hard-shelled prey like large oysters, and that's what you see here in these very strange mushroom-shaped teeth. Within the same ecosystem, we have this great example of the top predator. This is Prognathodon kianda. You see the skeleton's about 25 feet long.
In addition to top predators like the monster-like mosasaur, the exhibit also includes fossils of gentler creatures and an ancient giant sea turtle.
We have a snapshot of this moment in time, 72 million years ago, that has preserved all of these animals that were living together in one place.
Scientists say that an asteroid wiped out most of those ancient animals millions of years ago and warn that today it's human activity that's threatening our modern ecosystem.
If you look at the world today, after the big extinction 66 million years ago, then the ecosystems recovered. And now we have a burgeoning population in the world, and that requires extracting protein. And that means overfishing.
The lesson here, Jacobs points out, is that we don't necessarily need an asteroid to disrupt our fragile ecosystem. People all by themselves are capable of destroying it by exploiting vital resources. Julie Tabo, VOA News, Washington.
Well, and that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings, Today Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Ballet dancers are known for dancing on the tips of their toes.
Tiptoe.
It sounds as if Anna and Jonathan are going to dance for us.
Thanks for going to my friend's art show last night.
Yeah, it was fun.
What did you think of her paintings?
They were, let's see, how can I say this? The paintings were